Welcome to the Color of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. Many of us are feeling a wide range of emotions: sadness, anger, fear, sometimes hopelessness and helplessness. This season, we will be exploring all the feelings and ways to empower each other to take action. So, let's go. Game on. Welcome to our special guest, Jia-Yi Dallas. She plays Jia-Yi in the upcoming Netflix series The Hunting Wives, starring Dermot Mulroney, Malin Akerman, and Brittany Snow. Based on the book of the same name by May Cobb, the series follows Sophie O'Neil, who relocates to deep East Texas and quickly falls under the spell of glamorous socialite Margo, leading to a world of obsession, seduction, and murder. Jia-Yi plays Jia-Yi, a sharp and strategic political advisor and campaign manager to Mulroney's character. You may recognize Dallas from her breakout role in Netflix Stranger Things as Jen, Mr. Clarke's girlfriend, Jen Woo, from season 1. Her film work includes action thrillers alongside Jean-Claude Van Damme, Morgan Freeman, Frank Grillo, and Juliette Binoche. Outside of acting, Jia-Yi remains connected to her medical background as a philanthropic patient advocate for women's health. She has published 20 clinical research papers focused on surgical outcomes, including disparities in race and age. Please welcome Jia-Yi. As I've read in the very, very detailed bio of Jia-Yi, Dr. Jia-Yi, welcome on our show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Stephanie.
I'm so honored that you're here. We have so much to dive into, one of which is you went from in the medical field to becoming an actress. Tell me, it's so inspiring because you followed seemingly contrasting paths.
Yeah, it's definitely two different parts of the brain there. Yeah, I mean, I went to medical school. I was a good Asian daughter and wanted to be the best at everything. So I pursued surgery. I wanted to be a surgeon. I did an internship in general surgery over at the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York.
Yeah.
Realized just very quickly that it's so demanding. It's very demanding, very self-sacrificing. And I just, I had an emotional hard time with it, I would say. I didn't have the emotional fortitude to be cut out to be a surgeon. So I was like, well, let me pivot here. I spent so many years in medical school. Let's not throw it away. I pivoted over to pathology because I figured I already had the anatomical training,
Yes.
If I'm getting any sort of biopsies or specimens, like I already know how that came to be. And so I did that for a couple of years over at UIC in Chicago. And, it's funny how life works out. I always loved acting, and it was something that I started doing on the weekends as a hobby when I was in Chicago because I had a little bit more time as a pathologist. And my husband, who's also a doctor, he ended up matching his residency in California.
Got it.
And in medicine, it's like
You
can't
just go.
where you're placed.
Yes.
We have a whole lot of say in that. So we kind of had this, we had to have that conversation of what do we do? Like, we've been together for about 2 years. Do we pursue a long distance relationship for years, or do we figure out some alternative situation, right? And I kind of was like, well, I don't love what I do, I always wanted to like do something creative. And so we came to the decision that I would move to California and see what happens.
Something happened, so that's what we're going to talk more about.
Right? Yeah, I mean, having an MD is not the worst backup plan. And, worst case scenario, I could maybe open up a Botox clinic in LA. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's living the dream.
There's options, right? So I don't know. We made this decision, and I feel so grateful to have such a supportive husband. Like really, really, I don't think I could be. I definitely wouldn't be here, successful, happy, thriving if it wasn't for him. So I have to give credit where credit is due. But that's the short version of how I ended up in LA and started acting.
Well, I like how you're like, I had more time because I was in pathology. It's like it's
Yeah,
still,
I had more time. It's still a lot of hours, still a full
yeah,
time.
exactly. And I totally get the matching process. And for those that haven't, or fortunately or unfortunately never been through the matching process, you have to like mutually want each other in a site and the applicant. And so and even more so, gosh, when you're a couple and you're both doctors and you have to try to match in the same area, that's even more challenging. So in a way, that was kind of a blessing that, you know,
Yeah, it was evidence to me that sometimes, the world just works in mysterious ways. I don't like everything happens for a reason. That sounds very woo-woo, very LA, but
you're there now,
the
so it's
process,
fine.
you know what I mean? It worked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, tell me a little bit more though about what led to this interest or facilitated this interest in acting, because it didn't sound like it came from nowhere. It was just like, oh, let me do this on the side, but then it came from somewhere.
Yeah, I always wanted to be an actor. I loved acting. Like when I was a kid, I was so hammy. I was such a cheese ball. I did like, school plays and theater summer camps. I did after school theater, drama club. I entered like drama club competitions. When I got too old for summer camp, I became a chaperone. Like I did all of it because I loved it so much. And the thing is like I grew up in Florida, like this tiny little town in Florida. And so coming from there, acting was it was literally just a make-believe world, right? It wasn't something that you could pursue. It was like, um, a special career for like the rich and famous and beautiful, and you have to live in Hollywood. So I just never realized that was something you could do as an adult. You know what I mean? Um, and, medicine was just kind of, I grew up in a family of doctors, so medicine was the natural next step for me. And when I got to Chicago, I just had a little bit extra time and I was like, you know what? I don't want to use the term burnt out, but I was just so like one track minded. I was just work, 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 work. And I was like, I need to find something for myself. I need to find an outlet, something to
Yes.
kind of bring my sense of self and humanity back. So I got this is totally random. On Facebook, I had found like this background casting cattle call for Chicago Fire. And I was like, what the heck? This is on a Saturday. It's an overnight shoot. It shouldn't interfere with any of my professional life. Let's just go for it and see what happens. I don't even know what that means, being a background actor. It just sounds like fun. And so I submitted to that. I got accepted because they needed like 200 people.
But it was legit, right?
But
Like
it's a legit show. I mean, I was so
it
excited. I was like, oh my God, this is my big break. And I mean, I've since learned a lot since then, but
was.
it was, I don't know, that was the first step. That was my first little tumble back into the acting world. And, I don't know if you've ever done background work before, but there's just a lot of time sitting around with other actors and talking with them, kind of picking their brain a little bit. I was like, wow, you guys do this full time? Like there's acting work to be had. You can make money doing this. And that something is just like stuck in my brain. And I was like, well, why can't I figure this out? Why not? Why can't I see where this road leads? And yeah, I fell down that rabbit hole and discovered it was something you could pursue. And so I
That's
did.
amazing. Well, you grew up in a family of doctors and you mentioned, you were the good Asian daughter going down that road. I hear you. What was your family's reaction when you decided to pivot here? And I'll use that pivot as an understatement because
Yeah.
I imagine it was a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, mom, dad, all those years, all that tuition. My parents, I will give them so much credit. They're so supportive. And what I like to say is that as much as your parents want you to be successful as like a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, like at the end of the day, they want their kids to be happy, you know? And I think they really saw that I was kind of struggling to try and find my happiness as a
Yeah.
doctor. And it could be that I chose, specialties that are a little more challenging, but they saw that I tried one thing. And when it didn't work, I did try another specialty, something that was more, that gave me more time and more of like, not so many like emergency on-call, high stress scenarios. So they saw me kind of like try and figure it out. And then like I said, when my husband, then fiance, when he matched in California and we
Hmm.
had a conundrum that we had to figure out, my parents knew that he made me happy and they were like, you know what? We will support your decision. We trust that you're going to find your way. You're smart enough to have gotten this far. So, and yeah, I give him a lot of credit for that because I think that was probably a very difficult decision to,
It's
to
difficult for you.
well, it's difficult for everyone, because it's like one, they don't know anything about the acting world, and neither did I, for that matter. I hadn't trained in it, I hadn't gone to school for it. So to come from a very like academically minded, school of thought to like jump forward into something where there is no guarantee, there is no work hard and you'll succeed. Like in
Right.
medicine, you work hard, you follow the steps, you pass your tests, you're going to be a doctor, right? Acting is not like that, right? You could have all the success in the world and then years later, just crickets. So I think it took a lot of trust on their part and a
Hmm.
lot of, I don't know, just, I guess, faith in me and faith in my husband. I'm his problem now.
That's amazing. I hope they did. I mean, I'm sure they said it in so many words as a joke, but yeah, I think I joke with my mother-in-law all the time. I'm like, your son did this. And she's like, not my son anymore. He's
Yeah.
yours. I was like, all right, mom.
That's so funny.
Um, but thinking about transitioning to acting, how have you been able to highlight some of the skills you've learned in medicine and apply it there? Because, like you said, there's no guarantees. You deal with so many challenges, and rejection is part of the DNA of becoming an actor, essentially. So,
Yeah.
how do you cope with those things?
I think the biggest thing that helps me is perspective. Um, when it comes to when it comes to having a bad day as an actor, it does not come even remotely close to having a bad day as a doctor.
Mm,
At the end of the day, no one's hurt. Nobody died, right? There's no tragedy. There's no bad news you have to break to someone. So that really puts things in perspective for me. I also am so grateful that I've been able to find, a little bit of success with my hard work. And, I think being a doctor, having gone through medical school, having gone through residency, a surgical residency, like it really toughens you up in the sense that, all the medical hazing. If I get rejected for a movie or a TV show, I'm like, it's cool. I'll just move on to the next one. It's all good. Like I think it gives you a little bit of confidence in a different way that like my value or my worth isn't necessarily tied to what I do anymore. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Because inherently I know that I'm strong and I know that I can do the things I put my mind to. I can run on no sleep. I can run on no meals. I can
perfect training as an
I can
actor.
focus for
Like,
8 hours at a
like
time. I can memorize a ton of stuff. Like,
I was
yeah,
gonna say, your memory's still good. Like mine, I'm feeling like, oh my goodness, did I use all my brain power like in grad school? Like it's interesting. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a very mature place to be in though, because so much of even media and culture is very much like you are successful if you do X, Y, and Z, if you have this amount of money, if book this thing or whatnot. And so I think that's a great lesson and advice for folks to really get out of their comfort zone about who are you really and does this really define you? So we're a huge Stranger Things family here. We have to watch all of it over again because
Yeah.
it's been a minute. And so I want to remember everything. The last thing I know, Max is in a coma, but everything else, like I need to remember. So it was so cool that I told them today that I was interviewing you. What was that experience like for you?
That was such a just mind-blowing experience. There's two parts to this story. I'm gonna ramble for just a second
Go
here.
for it.
Stranger Things was actually my very first mainstream, like not an indie project. It was actually my very first role. It's what got me SAG eligible. So it was like in hindsight, it's kind of just insane that I had this opportunity at the very beginning of my career and it really got the ball rolling. So for that alone, I will be eternally grateful for it. Um, with that being said, when I got to set, I was figuring things out. I
Yes.
wasn't a seasoned professional. I hadn't been on, TV show sets as a principal actor before. It's a whole different, like, a set of skills and etiquette and hierarchy. So, when I think back on it, I think back very fondly, but there are definitely moments where I'm a little cringing at myself. I'm like, oh my God, I was so green. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just figuring it out. Um, so it's just so funny when I think about that. And for it to have become what it has become, right? Like this television entertainment cultural like genre show. Um, that's just it's just something I'm always going to be proud of.
I mean, to say and feel like part of something greater and bigger is always like a very special thing, especially as your first
As
like
my first,
mainstream.
yeah. And with the nature of Netflix, like everything drops at once. So it's not like there isn't this slow build, right? Like people word of mouth. It's like all or nothing. So I remember I was telling my friends, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna be in this show and I'm so excited for it. And I think at the time they didn't really advertise a whole lot for Stranger Things season one. It was, not the biggest budget show. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, what is it about? It's like, oh, it's an 80s show with kids and monsters. Like, oh. Like who's in it? I was like, oh, Winona Ryder. And they're like, well, she hasn't really done anything in about 10 years. So people just weren't as thrilled for it as I was. I wanted to do a watch party. I'm in episode 7. And so they were like 7 hours just to see your face. Like everyone was just kind of like, whatever, Jackie, whatever. And I think like 2 or 3 days later, when people started watching it and it started catching on, and it just became this like, viral Netflix top 10, then all of a sudden, like my phone started dinging, my social media started dinging. I started getting screenshots and text message, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool.
That's
This is
amazing.
cool.
And, it has really become this cultural phenomenon because we've gone to the experiences in San Francisco
Mhm.
where they've like recreated the sets and just it has really catapulted so many people's careers and lovely people too. Like I just it's just amazing to see. So well, before we get into your new role and telling us more exciting things about that, I just wanted to touch upon because I think it's really important. You're still maintaining and having your foot in medical advocacy, especially for women's health. And I wanted to, give some space for that about what you're doing with that and also what should people know about it? Because right now we're in a very pivotal moment where women's health is a hot take, apparently. Not to me, but put it like that.
It's crazy what gets politicized now. Yeah, so when I was in medicine still, one of the things that I did a lot of was I did a lot of clinical research because that was something that really interested me at the time. And in part of I did a lot of like outcome studies and comparisons of like, is this better, is that better, kind of a thing. And one of the areas that I found very interesting was the disparities, right? Like how the outcomes for the exact same procedure is better in men than it is for women. And why there's so many more cases for like male patients as opposed to female patients, and why some conditions and diseases are diagnosed in men, but not in women, even though they still happen. And I just remember that kind of like being a part of my research and adding it to the queue of things that I wanted to explore before I left medicine. Um, so fast forward now, and I still have, I still have a pretty healthy like circle of medical friends and people that I've met along the way. And like I said, my husband is still a doctor. He's actually a urologist and he specializes
Gotcha.
in female pelvic health. So through him, I've also met a lot of really wonderful urologists, urogynecologists, and their passion is revolving around helping women with their pelvic issues and pelvic pain. And I know, like, when it comes to reproductive health, like gynecology issues, I know that gets a lot of attention and a lot of, press and hate and, all that conflicting stuff. But when it comes to more urological issues, that's just like overlooked. People don't really talk about it, or they lump it all together and they just assume, oh, you have pelvic pain. Yeah, but we don't like abortion, so we're not going to talk about it. It's like they're two completely different things.
Right.
And it affects women so much, as I'm learning, like from my husband with his specialty. So I kind of found this slow period in my life during the pandemic where I was like, all right, what can I do with my time that's creative? What can I do that feels productive and gratifying? And I kind of was like, I want to get back into, I want to dabble. I want to dabble back in medicine. I don't want to necessarily go back and practice and make that my full-time thing, but I do have this interesting blending of skill sets here where I have the medical expertise and then I do filming and production and I kind of understand that side of it. A couple of my doctor friends wanted to get into social media. And so I was like, why don't we, instead of doing silly TikTok videos, why don't we make like educational content? You know? So I've been working a lot with some of my doctor colleagues who want to be medical influencers and just kind of helping them talk to their patients and teach them and educate them about these conditions that, you could Google and WebMD, but who knows what you're going to read online. Teach them not just about their conditions, but also like how to be their own best advocate, right? Like how to not be afraid to ask for second or third opinions, not to be afraid to like find a specialist because there's so many doctors who don't specialize. And some of these conditions are so uncommon or so overlooked and so unresearched that, you really need to find someone who's passionate about them to really help you.
Yeah, and having confidence rooted in skill. I mean, having had two children and having to get my blood drawn so many times, I have to look the person in the eye before they draw my blood. And I was like, luckily I could use my psychologist skills of like, does this person look confident? How much experience do they
Yeah.
have? They hate me. But I'm just like they've missed so many times that I just can't, so I think that's the other thing is like the bedside manner thing is very important and how much confidence and experience does a
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
have?
Yeah, just how much do they care about you as a person,
Yes.
right? Like we hear some of the biggest issues that women face as far as pelvic health goes is like, urinary incontinence, like, bladder issues, bladder pain, pelvic pain, pain with intimacy or prolapse, like especially after you've had children. And I feel like so often everyone just dismisses it as like, oh, that's what happens when you get older, or
Yeah.
oh, that's what happens when you have kids, or it's embarrassing. Why are you talking about that? And so I think really just kind of highlighting that awareness and offering resources for women to find and self-educate, I think is really empowering.
Well, thank you so much for continuing the advocacy and kudos to your husband on multiple fronts, not just for the medicine, but being supportive. So tell us about all these exciting episodes and new projects, especially your role as Gia.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm so excited for this. So the show is called The Hunting Wives. It's coming out on Netflix July 21st, Monday, which is in a few days. So I don't know, maybe this will be posted by then. It is a fun, sexy thriller, murder mystery drama. All the genres that I personally love to watch. It's based off of a book by May Cobb. And the book is great. I think this is a really fun adaptation of it. My character, so basically the show is about a girl named Sophie, played by Brittany Snow.
Hmm.
She comes to Texas and she kind of falls in this circle of very rich, powerful, affluent, beautiful women, and she just becomes completely enamored with the main character, Margo, played by Malin Akerman. And so everything is fun until trouble happens. It's a drama. So then my character comes in the later half of the season, and she is a little bit more of an outsider. She's not a Texas gal, a little more polished, a little more professional. She's I'll say she's there to help clean up the mess a little bit, but she may bring a little mess of her own. Characters on these sort of shows will always have some kind of they're bold characters, right? There's twists and there's ulterior motives and there's secrets and there's lies. And I think I had a lot of fun with it. And I think people watching it will have a lot of fun.
Well, it's funny because you seem like the nicest person and you just emanate so much energy and you're like, hee, I gotta clean up all this drama and people have secrets. And yeah, it just makes it even more exciting because like I'm so rooting for you moving forward. And this definitely check out the show. It sounds like our cup of tea. I just so appreciate you being on the show and you just seem like such a wonderful human being. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. This is really great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. We would love for you to subscribe to the podcast and join our community on all our socials at colorsuccesspodcast.com. Looking forward to you checking out my memoir, Cancel the Filter, Realities of a Psychologist, Podcaster, and Working Mother of Color on Amazon and wherever books are sold. I'd love to hear your Cancel the Filter moments.
Well, I can give 'em more, 'cause when I'm on the field, you know it's game on.